Your life isn't hard because it's complicated. It's hard because you're missing 15 ideas that most people outside Japan have never once been taught. And I don't mean 15 productivity hacks. I don't mean 15 things to add to your already full schedule. I mean 15 specific, almost laughably small shifts in how ordinary moments are handled. Shifts so quiet you might not even notice them the first time you try one. But by the time you reach number 15, you'll feel something loosen, something that's been unnecessarily tight for years. Stay until number 15, because I'm going to give you what Japan calls the 1-minute reset, a single 30-second practice that ties all 15 of these ideas together and turns them from a list into a life. But first, number 7 is the one I want you to pay attention to most, because number 7 is not about adding anything to your day. It is about removing something invisible, something you cannot see but feel constantly, something that is draining you right now in this exact moment and has been for years. Let's begin. Idea number 1, the 2-minute rule, but the Japanese version. You've probably heard the 2-minute rule before. If something takes less than 2 minutes, do it now. Standard productivity advice, fine. But that's not how Japan applies it. Japan applies it to the space around you. If something in your immediate environment will take less than 2 minutes to fix, return, wipe, fold, or put back, it gets done the moment you notice it. Not added to a list, not saved for the weekend, done right then. Here is what most people do not realize is happening when they skip this. Every small thing left undone is an open loop. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect. The brain fixates on uncompleted tasks far more vividly than completed ones. A dish left in the sink is not just a dish. It is an open loop running in the background, competing for a fraction of your attention all day without your permission. In a home full of small open loops, the cumulative drain is significant. Not dramatically, silently. The way a dozen open tabs slow a laptop. Apply the 2-minute rule to your space every time you notice something and the tabs close constantly. The mental quiet that accumulates is not small at all. That is idea number 1, and you can start it in the next room the moment this video ends. Idea number 2, eat earlier than you think you should. Not less, earlier. Japan's evening meal tends to happen well before most Americans sit down to dinner. This isn't cultural preference. It's one of the most overlooked variables in how well you sleep, how clearly you think the next morning, and how your body manages energy without a single change to what you eat. Here's the mechanism. Digestion runs warm. Your core temperature rises while your body processes food. Sleep needs the opposite. Your core temperature has to drop for your brain to reach deep, restorative stages. Eat close to bedtime, and you're asking a body mid-digestion to shift into deep restoration at the same time. Those two signals fight each other, and sleep is what loses. That's part of why a heavy meal at 9 feels like it should knock you out, but leaves you groggy at 6 the next morning anyway. You weren't unconscious for 8 hours. You were in a quiet tug-of-war for several of them. Move your last real meal even 45 minutes earlier than you currently do. You're not changing what's on the plate. You're giving your body a head start on the one job it needs to do best, shutting down properly. That is idea number 2. Tonight is the first night you can test it. Idea number 3, the doorway rule. Almost every home in Japan has a Genkan, a small sunken entryway just inside the front door where shoes come off before a single step goes further inside. Most outsiders assume this is about cleanliness. It partly is. But the real function has almost nothing to do with dirt. It's about your nervous system. There's a name for what happens in that half second at the Genkan. A boundary ritual, a small physical act that tells your brain a context has changed. Without something like it, the stress of your commute, your inbox, that tense meeting walks through your front door with you and quietly attaches itself to your evening. You sit down for dinner still running the operating system of your workday because nothing ever told your brain the workday was over. Removing shoes at a threshold forces a pause. Hands busy, eyes down, a few seconds where your body physically marks the shift from out there to in here. That pause is the boundary, not the shoes. You don't need a Genkan. You need a threshold moment you actually notice. A key hook by the door, changing out of work clothes the second you're inside, anything repeatable. The object doesn't matter, the noticing does. That is idea number 3. Idea number 4, Hara Hachi Bu. Hara Hachi. In Okinawa, home to some of the longest lived people on earth, there's a saying used before meals. Hara Hachi Bu. Eat until you're 80% full. It sounds like restraint. It's actually timing. Your stomach's stretch receptors and your brain's fullness signals take roughly 20 minutes to catch up with what you've already eaten. Eat until you feel completely full and you've overshot before the signal even arrives. Stop at 80% and the last 20% registers on its own a few minutes later without a second bite. The difference isn't just physical. People who eat this way describe more energy after meals instead of the familiar post-lunch heaviness, because the body isn't managing a surplus. You don't need to weigh or count anything. You need one pause halfway through a meal and one honest question. Am I satisfied or am I still eating out of momentum? That is idea number 4. Idea number 5, the 1% rule. Japanese manufacturing gave the world Kaizen, continuous improvement in small increments, and it escaped the factory floor a long time ago. The core idea is almost insultingly simple. Improve by 1%, not by leaps. Most people abandon new habits because they aim for a version of themselves that's too far away, and the gap feels like proof of failure by day 3. Kaizen sidesteps that entirely. It doesn't ask you to make your bed perfectly. It asks you to pull the blanket up. It doesn't ask for a spotless kitchen. It asks you to wipe one counter. The 1% is never really the point. The identity underneath it is. Every tiny repetition tells your brain, I am someone who follows through. And that belief compounds faster than any single big habit ever could. Pick one thing today and do the smallest possible version of it. That is idea number 5. Idea number 6, Ichigo, Ichie. 4 characters, 1 phrase, 1 time, 1 meeting. It comes from the tea ceremony, where every gathering is treated as something that will never happen again in exactly this way, even with the same people in the same room, drinking the same tea. Most days blur together for one specific reason. Your brain compresses repeated unremarkable experiences into a single memory, so a month of normal can vanish, leaving almost nothing behind. Ichigo Ichie is a quiet rebellion against that compression. It doesn't ask you to make today special, it asks you to notice that today is already unrepeatable, whether you notice it or not. Try it on something small and recurring. The coffee you drink every morning, a conversation with someone you see daily. Notice one detail you'd normally skip. That single act of attention is enough to stop a day from disappearing. That is idea number 6. We're 1 away now. Remember what I said about number 7. Idea number 7, the invisible tax you've been paying for years. Here's what almost no one names directly. You make hundreds of small, forgettable decisions before 10 a.m. What to wear, what to eat, which route to take, whether to answer that message now or later. None of these feel heavy on their own. That's exactly the problem. Researchers who study decision-making call this decision fatigue, and it behaves like a battery, not a skill. Every choice, no matter how small, spends a little of the same limited resource your brain uses for willpower, patience, and focus later in the day. By the time you reach a decision that actually matters about your work, your relationship, your health, you're making it on a nearly empty battery. and you don't even know it's empty. You just feel foggy, irritable, tired in a way sleep didn't fix. Japan's culture of uniforms, of set daily patterns, of the same walk to the same train at the same time, isn't rigidity for its own sake. It's a refusal to spend the battery on things that don't deserve it. Every decision you remove from your morning is decision fatigue capacity you get to spend later on something that actually counts. This is the invisible thing I promised you, not a task you're failing to do. 100 tiny taxes you didn't know you were paying all day, every day for years. Pick 3 decisions you make daily that don't need to be decisions at all: what to wear, what to eat for breakfast, which way to walk, and fix them once. You'll feel it by the afternoon. That is idea number 7. Idea number 8, Radio Taiso. Since 1928, a short stretching routine has played on Japanese radio every morning, and people, entire schools, offices, neighborhoods still do it together. Not because it's an intense workout, it isn't, because it requires 0 decisions. No choosing an exercise, no choosing a duration, no deciding whether today is a rest day. The decision was made decades ago, and all that's left is showing up. It's idea number 7 again, apply to your body instead of your calendar. You don't need the specific routine. You need one movement sequence, the same one every morning, small enough to take 90 seconds, so your body learns it doesn't need permission to start the day. That is idea number 8. Idea number 9, Mottainai. The word roughly translates to what a waste, but it carries more grief than that phrase suggests in English. It's traditionally used for wasted food or wasted objects. Applied personally, it's most useful for something else. Wasted pockets of time, the 3 minutes waiting for a kettle, the 11 minutes in a checkout line. Most people fill these with a phone reflexively and feel slightly worse afterward without knowing why. Mottainai treats that dead time as something with value, not because you need to be productive inside it, but because reaching for a screen out of habit is itself a small, repeated theft from your own attention. Next time you're waiting on something small, try doing nothing instead. Just notice where you are. That's the whole practice. That is idea number 9. Idea number 10, Danshari. 3 characters: refuse, dispose, separate. Most people know it as a decluttering method for objects. What almost nobody applies it to is obligations. The same acquiring instinct that fills a closet with things you don't wear fills a calendar with commitments you don't want. Danshari applied to your time means practicing the small no before you need the big one. Declining the optional meeting, skipping the group chat that drains you, saying I can't make it without a paragraph of justification attached. Pick one recurring commitment this week that you keep out of guilt rather than desire, and decline it once. That is idea number 10. Idea number 11, Omotenashi, turned inward. Omotenashi is Japanese hospitality, anticipating a guest's needs before they have to ask. A glass refilled before it's empty, a blanket offered before someone says they're cold. Almost everyone extends this kind of attention to guests and withholds it entirely from themselves. You'd notice a friend was thirsty. You routinely ignore your own. Try treating yourself once a day like a guest you're hosting. The water poured before you're parched. The 5-minute break taken before you're burnt out, not earned, just offered. That is idea number 11. Idea number 12, Wabi-Sabi, beauty in imperfection, in the incomplete, in things that show the wear of being used. It's most often applied to pottery and design. It's most useful applied to your own unfinished projects. Perfectionism doesn't actually protect quality. It mostly prevents starting, because a flawless first draft doesn't exist, and waiting for one is just a polite way of never beginning. Wabi-Sabi releases that requirement completely. The cracked bowl is still a bowl. The rough draft is still a draft. Finish one small thing today at 70% and let it be finished anyway. That is idea number 12. Idea number 13, Shikata ganai. It cannot be helped, not resignation, precision, a quiet, immediate sorting of your circumstances into two piles. Things you can act on and things you cannot. The traffic, the weather, what someone else already decided. Shikata ganai doesn't ask you to feel good about the second pile. It asks you to stop spending energy arguing with it. Next time something outside your control ruins a plan, say the English version out loud. It cannot be helped. Then immediately ask what's still inside your control. That second question is where your energy actually belongs. That is idea number 13. Idea number 14, the Ofuro Wind-Down. A Japanese bath isn't for getting clean. You wash first, separately, then soak. The bath itself is purely a transition, a deliberate signal to your body that the day is over, built on nothing more complicated than warm water and stillness. Warm water raises your temperature on purpose. So the drop afterward, the same drop idea number 2 depends on for sleep, happens faster and more completely. A 10-minute soak or even a warm foot bath, if that's all the time you have, tells your nervous system something a quick functional shower never does. We are done for today. That is idea number 14. Idea number 15, Yutori, deliberate slack, space left on purpose, between meetings, between tasks, between obligations, not because you're lazy, but because a schedule packed edge to edge has no room left to absorb a single surprise, and life is only ever made of surprises. This is the idea the other 14 have been quietly building toward. A life with no Yutori is the unnecessarily tight feeling I mentioned at the start, and it isn't caused by any one thing. It's caused by the absence of deliberate space. Leave 15 minutes unscheduled between two things tomorrow. Don't fill it. That's the whole practice, and it's the hardest one on this list because doing nothing on purpose feels at first like doing something wrong, That is idea number 15, the 1-minute reset. Here's how all 15 become one practice instead of 15 separate ones. Next time you cross a threshold, walking into your home, sitting down after a hard conversation, closing your laptop for the night, take 30 seconds. 1. Scan the space in front of you for anything you can close in under 2 minutes and close it. 2. 1 slow breath out. Longer than the breath in, the same drop in tension the Genkan and the bath are both quietly built on. 3. Ask yourself one question. What am I choosing to let go of before this next moment starts? That's it. 15 ideas compressed into a single repeatable motion you can use as many times a day as you need it. None of this required a new app, a stricter routine, or one more thing added to a schedule that's already full. It required noticing 15 small moments that were already happening anyway and handling them slightly differently. So here's the only thing I'll ask in return. Out of all 15, one of them is the one you're missing most. The one that, if you started tonight, would loosen something that's been tight for longer than you'd like to admit. Comment the number, just the number. I read everyone.